The FA Cup is the oldest national football competition in the world. In the summer of 1871, Sunderland-born Charles William Alcock, the Football Association secretary at the time, proposed a challenge cup for its members to compete in. A few short months later, November of the same year, the very first FA Cup kicked off. Eligibility to play in the competition is subject to specific criteria, but part of the reason it's so popular with fans is that it isn't just the big teams who compete.
I remember back in December 1967 when I was a kid, watching Ryhope Colliery Welfare. Ryhope, for those that don't know it, Ryhope's a part of Sunderland, it's where I'm from, very proudly from, and Ryhope got through to the first round of the FA Cup. And they played Workington, who at the time Workington were a football league club, they were in the 4th division. There was a big carnival atmosphere in Ryhope, everything was festooned in red and white. There was about 1,000 people there, which was as many as they could get in. I remember it cost an astronomical 4 shillings for a ticket, and it's still the biggest day in Ryhope's football history.
It took Sunderland a little while to make it to the final of the FA Cup, but in 1913 they played Aston Villa at Crystal Palace, a match that has been described as tense and rough. For Sunderland, it was not to be. Aston Villa won by a single goal, though Sunderland did finish top of their league that season, which may have been some consolation. In 1937 though, Sunderland met Preston North End at Wembley for the FA Cup final.
Here come the teams that have battled their way through those tense early rounds to be within 90 minutes of victory. It's a tense time for them, but they'll never forget this day.
As you'd expect, this was a big event for Sunderland, and some 7,000 fans headed to London to support the team. Despite a lead for Preston in the first half of the match, Sunderland came back fighting and secured their victory 3-1 to bring the cup home to a jubilant town. After many disappointing years, finally, in 1972-73, Sunderland progressed through the rounds of the FA Cup, and fans were hopeful, but still realistic about their chances.
We were then drawn away to Manchester City in the 5th round. Now, Manchester City were the cup favourites. They had knocked out Liverpool in the previous round, they were full of superstars, they were expected to wipe the floor with Sunderland. And I remember as a 15-year-old, as I got off the bus in Manchester that day, and you have to bear in mind that I am the eternal optimist when it comes to Sunderland. Even I thought, we're away to Manchester City, by the time we get back on this bus, we'll be out of the cup. By the time we got back on the bus, there was nobody going to convince me that Sunderland weren't going to win the cup.
Sunderland had drawn in the match with Manchester City, but then won the replay 3-1. And suddenly, there was real hope that Sunderland might be in with a chance. On the 5th of May 1973 came the long-awaited final. Sunderland, in the 2nd division at the time, were to meet 1st Division Leeds United.
A deep one again. Watson is right in there. So too is Hallam. And Porterfield! Oh, Porterfield has scored! And Sunderland!
32 minutes into the match, Ian Porterfield scored for Sunderland, and Wembley went wild.
Ian was a magical player who always seemed to have time on the ball, was never hurried, a superb passer of the ball, but on his own admission only had one foot. He could only kick with his left foot, and virtually the only ball in his career he kicked with his right foot was the goal he scored at Wembley, which was a right-footed shot. He was so left-footed that in those days you used to get a golden boot if you'd scored the winning goal. And although he'd scored with his right foot, he asked for the golden boot to be a left-footed boot because that was how he kicked every other football in his career.
Back home, Sunderland was a ghost town, with everyone indoors watching the match. Sunderland, against all odds, were the FA Cup winners, and Bob Stokoe rushed onto the pitch with his arms held up in joy, still wearing his Mac and Trilby hat. In town, the sound of horns and cheers echoed through the streets as people rushed out of their houses to celebrate with friends and neighbours. 3 days after their triumph at Wembley, Sunderland brought the trophy home, starting an open-top bus parade from Carville in Durham to Roker Park. Estimates put the crowds in the region of 1 million people who came out to see the cup, and the lads who'd brought it home.